You're listening to Grown and Growing with Sonia Hamlin. What's up, everybody? As always, thank you for joining me for another episode. This week, I'm doing something a little different. I am challenging myself as a podcaster by having a panel of 3 guests to talk about this week's topic. I'm kind of excited. My guest and I have been tight since the day we walked into grad school at VCU, Virginia Commonwealth University, in 2002. We have been laughing, debating, and cheering each other on from the sidelines for the last 20 years, and it's been amazing to see how their life has evolved. Before I tell you a little bit about each guest, I want to talk about the topic of this episode, being your authentic self at work. I wanted to talk about this topic because now, more than ever, the lines between your personal life and your professional life are completely blurred. Maybe a little blurred, but they're blurred nonetheless. Social media is a big reason for that. I mean, think about it. We know more about our coworkers than we like to know or than we care to know because of what they share on social media. But then there's also the pandemic. Many people spent a significant amount of time working from home, which meant your coworkers got a little glimpse into your life. And then if you think about the issues that are most often debated in the United States today, they're often social issues like race, gender, sex, wealth. And we are talking about these things more because people are demanding that they be able to be 100% themselves in all aspects of their lives. And that includes the workplace. It's almost impossible to completely separate or compartmentalize your work and your home life. I mean, you have to be very good and very deliberate at doing that. I think about when I first entered the workplace. I started my professional career almost 20 years ago, well, over 20 years ago. And I knew back then that you had to wear your hair a certain way, you had to dress a certain way, speak a certain way, and portray yourself in a certain way in order to get ahead in corporate America. Not only was that taught to me in college, it was also reinforced because I was a Black person. It was expected more from me as a Black person, and I'm sure other people of color felt this as well, that you had to assimilate more in order to get ahead in corporate America. So just think about it. Even today, times have changed, right? Times have definitely changed, and those barriers aren't there in the way they used to be. I remember asking if I could wear braids at my first job out of college because I didn't know, and braids were kind of controversial back then. So are you 100% comfortable being who you are at work? Think about it. Are you more of yourself because you're just comfortable being yourself, or are you more reserved because you know that you don't work in the type of organization that would support you being 100% yourself? My guest and I were actually talking about authenticity in the workplace over a group chat. So there was an incident that happened in the media world around a certain person, and we were debating if individuality and authenticity could still be accepted even at the highest levels of a professional workplace. So I knew when we started that group chat that I wanted to discuss it on Grown and Growing. And so we are today. Here's a little bit about my guests, who are also my good friends. Yadira Santana-Dowling. Yadira is the director of strategy at an ad agency in Miami. She is well-versed in the areas of branding and strategic communication. She has over 20 years of experience creating strategies for clients such as AARP, the Lincoln Motor Company, Dunkin' Donuts, Walgreens, Verizon, and so many more. She is passionate about building meaningful relationships between brands and people, and has extensive expertise in the US Hispanic and Urban markets. Yadira is the author of The 4-Day Creative Brief and is an effective communicator with an affinity for training and developing talent, as well as diversifying minds and places. She is a native of the Dominican Republic and currently resides in Miramar, Florida. Next is Roberta Hatchett. Roberta also has 20 years of experience working in the marketing field. She's worked in ad agencies and marketing and communication consultancies, as well as directly for brands like Bank of America and Brand USA. Recently, she has decided to switch lanes and celebrate her love for wine and interior design. She and her business partner have started Them Bohem, a Black woman-owned business based in Washington, D.C. Then Bohem is a wine and home goods retailer with a focus on honoring women and minority-owned winemakers and designers. Finally, I'm welcoming my first male guest, Emanuel Basnight. On LinkedIn, he describes himself as a strategist, creator, and hustler. And these three words so accurately describe who he is. That wasn't a part of his bio. I just added that. He has 20 years of marketing strategy experience working on brands like McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Walmart, Bacardi, and so many more. Recently, Emanuel has combined his love for branding and communication with spirituality. He is the owner of 2 companies aligned with spiritual wellness practices. In 2018, he started BrandsbyBashight, a handmade herbal skincare company that offers skincare and spirit care. More recently, in 2021, he founded Bless the Roads, a spiritual goods company devoted to Black spirituality. Emanuel is a native of Elizabeth City, North Carolina, and resides in Chicago. Man, my friends are impressive. I cannot wait for you to hear their thoughts on being authentic in the workplace. And because I have marketing and communications experts here on the panel, I couldn't resist asking them about the fairly recent debacle with HoneyPot. So without further ado, let's get into this topic. What's up, everybody? I am testing the limits of my podcasting expertise today because I have 3 guests on my show today, and I am very excited. I'm always excited to have my friends on the show, but I have been friends with these 3 people for 20 years, which I can't believe. We all met in grad school and connected day one and never separated. Even after many years of working in different industries in different parts of the country, we have always stayed connected. And the basis of this conversation actually started in our group chat. So I am happy to introduce Emanuel Basnight, Yadira Santana-Dowling, and Roberta Hatchett to the podcast today. Welcome, guys. Hello.
Thanks for
Hello.
having me.
Hi. Happy to be here.
Yes, thanks for joining me. So we're going to take our group chat and our conference calls and clean them up a bit. We're going to clean them up a bit and bring them to the podcast. Yes. So the reason I wanted us to have a conversation is we started a conversation talking about Bozoma St. John. And Bozoma, for the people who don't know, if you're not in the marketing communications field, you probably don't know who she is. If you work in science, you definitely don't know who she is. But she is a high profile marketing executive who has worked for some very, high profile, again, companies in the United States. So she started off when we first learned about her, around the time when I first learned about her, she worked with Apple Music. And I think she was kind of introduced to the world on a broader level because she was the first Black woman to present on the Apple stage during one of their launches. So she worked there for, I think, less than a year. And then she took her talents to Uber and worked there for, let me see, what do my notes say? A year. And then she left there and took her talents to Endeavor, which is a holding company that has many different companies underneath, like Miss America and some other stuff. She worked there for 2 years. And then she left there and took her talents to Netflix. And she worked at Netflix for less than 2 years. And this spring she left, right? She left Netflix. They parted ways mutually. So they both wanted to exit. They both wanted each other to be away from each other. And this stirred up a lot of conversation about her for two reasons. One, because of her quick tenure at all of these companies. So she stayed less than 2 years or around the 2-year mark, which, you know, I think if a white man did it, it probably wouldn't raise an eyebrow, but she was already high profile. She's Black. And so it raised some question. It was like, you know, why is she leaving these companies? Is it strategic? Is it her? Is it them? And then when the other thing that makes her story remarkable is that she herself is somebody who is very bold in her style, in the way she dresses. She looks like she can go, she looks like she could go from the club to a resort to an African wedding. And she will wear all of these things to work. The Oscars, I mean, she really dresses however she feels like in the morning. She's very tall. She has pounds of hair, and she, you know, she just stands out. And so, you know, the reason we started talking about her is because we were like, okay, now she is known for talking about being an individual, coming to work as you are, and let these people accept it. But then on the flip side, she didn't really stay at these companies for too long. Now, we don't really know what happened, but it begs the question is like, can you be an individual at work and still get the respect and stay there long term, or is it not? So I want to start off by asking you guys, what do you think about Bozoma's ascent and her ultimate exit from Netflix? She hasn't posted that she is working for another company yet. So she posted that she was free. And so good for her though. I definitely support being free. But what do you guys think? So we're gonna start with Emanuel.
Oh man, I thought you was gonna ask Yadira to talk first.
What?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, she said Emanuel. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's to me like watching her moves just brought up a lot of stuff for me, because I kind of feel like if I was still in the ad industry, like I would be inspired. Now I'm just kind of more intrigued by like the complexity of it all, because like her ascent, as you called it, like really incorporates like a lot of themes that as Black professionals we sort of like bought into to like into the professional workspace, like this whole issue of like, how do you present yourself? What is professionalism? I feel like professionalism is racism built around making white people comfortable in the business world, but that's just
okay.
Me.
You just gonna get right to it. Okay.
I know, right? I like it. Also, like brings to mind like Black people's like relationship to like work, and how we go into these institutions thinking that work is built on a meritocracy, but it's like kind of not. It's like people get in these positions and they don't always have the credibility or experience to like work these roles, and then it's this whole idea of like money and everything. So like at first I was confused, like everybody else was like, man, like, you know, she changed the job, like she changed her drawers, like what's happening? But like now, like even making my own transition like out of advertising and like working for myself, like I respect her like ultimately working to being free. Like so I ain't mad at her.
Yeah, and full disclosure, I follow Bozoma. I am a fan of Bozoma, and like you said, I was like, "Whoa, she is doing it." She is. If you are in the marketing profession and you want to, and you don't have the desire to be a entrepreneur, her ascent is something that people aspire to. You're like, "Ooh, how can I do that?" And so, what do you think, Yadira?
So I have a couple of thoughts. First is kudos to her for being a person that lives out loud. Because many people are still held back in their own minds, right? For many different reasons, and why they don't. So kudos to her for doing that. I can identify in different points in my career. I remember when we first started in advertising, we were advised to not stay in any place more than 2 years, because that's how you grow. And to
get
that
money.
I say, yeah, like that's how you increase what you make and the titles and stuff like that. If you stay in one place, that takes longer. So when I see that strategy, I'm not taken aback by it. We were recommended to do the same thing. On an interview, I remember being asked, well, you haven't been in a place very long. And I said, this is what I was advised to do. Like, there's nothing wrong in my industry. This is actually normal. What is abnormal is people staying in a place for like 10, 15 years, like our parents did. That no longer exists in our world. So I can understand that piece. But also, what I believe is going on with her is if she is into change management, was she brought in to do a very specific task, or did she give herself a specific task? Because sometimes when I take jobs, I say to myself, I got to check in with myself in a year. If I am not as excited as I was in day one, it's time to find something else to do.
Absolutely.
And I make sure that I go back and check with myself first. So I think that, when I see her trajectory and what she has done, is like, this is a change agent that went in and did what she proposed herself to do. And then decided to part ways, or it's no longer exciting, or things, the environment at Netflix right now, there's a lot going on at Netflix, and maybe she didn't want to be part of that anymore, and that's what I see in her decision.
Roberta?
I agree with that. I think because I've been following her for a couple of years as well, and I think it was when she started with Uber. She mentioned, it was a couple of articles that came out saying that, she came in during a point of transition. I remember that distinctly because Uber had a new CEO at the time who came from Expedia. And so came specifically to help them rebrand and go down a different path. And so I remember her saying, or like the article saying, that she came in for a very specific transition assignment, basically. So that made me think that, okay, maybe that's just what she wants to do, and that's what, and the industry might view her as a change agent. And so they bring her on specifically for those things. I think also with her story, and now granted, she's senior. So when you get to those high profile positions, there's a lot of PR involved when someone, comes in or leaves. So, but I haven't heard anything negative either from her or from the companies as far as like anything that, she did while she was at these companies. Again, that might be PR, but it could speak to the fact that she was there. She did her job as needed to be done. And she, it was mutually agreed that it was time for her to move on. If that's the case, I think that's great. And I don't see anything wrong with that. I think also the fact that she does have several of these like large companies, very, high profile companies. If there was something that was like, extraordinary about her in a negative way, I don't think she would have gotten these positions. I don't think that they would have brought her on if she was, quote, too much to handle. So yeah, I don't necessarily, it's curious, but I don't necessarily see it as a negative.
Yeah. And lots of people are able to get away with not doing anything at work, not being effective. Black women and Black men aren't those people. So you got to bring
worker bees.
Yes, you don't get that. You don't get that that benefit. So you have to come in bringing something, or you got to go. And so she often talked about, like I often watched her speeches and attended her classes. And one of the things that she always talked about is being yourself, showing up at work for yourself. So do you, you guys know Bozoma, like what she looks like, how she dresses, and maybe it's not to that extent, right? If that ain't your style, that's not your style. But do you think that level of individuality is possible for most women? And if it is possible, is it sustainable? Can you be that way throughout your career in a corporate space, not having gone out and working for yourself in a corporate space? Can you do that? Anybody can weigh in.
I think it's tough in corporate. I'm going to say that from the get-go, because one of the reasons I fell in love with marketing is because the industry in itself is a little bit more forgiving with that. We can dress, and our individualities actually appreciated and invited, because that leads to better creative work. But I did have a corporate job before I came to grad school, and it was a finance job working down in Wall Street. And you had to be square and wear the navy blues and stockings. And I'm like, this can't be my life. Yeah, right. So, in corporate, I do know that research shows our minority women, Hispanic and Black women, do not feel comfortable, dressing like they normally would. or about their hair the way it normally would fall, because they do feel like there's a standard there. And I'm talking specifically about corporate, you know. So I think that the conversations are increasing and bringing more awareness to it, understanding that in the last 2 years, we're talking about people bringing their full selves to work. Just those conversations alone make people more aware and then more accepting, and trying, you know, some are trying to create the environment where people will feel more comfortable. But we have a long way to go, because that's not how we've been for the last however many years.
To me, I think that's the key though. I'm not against Bozoma's message of encouraging people, encouraging women to like be their authentic selves at work. But like, to me, that's a little unfair because it puts the onus on the person. Like, change these damn companies and these organizations. You know what I'm saying? Because like, I've been in enough agencies to know that, like, yes, you know, you are championed and applauded for your personality and being able to like stand out and leverage your individuality, like to get the work done. But it's still a very corporate mindset at the top. P&L like still rules the day. So like me personally, I would much rather see her like encourage these companies to be more inclusive and to be more open-minded about what it means to create any type of like environment where people feel like they can be themselves and they could choose to bring 100% of themselves to work, or like 30%. Me personally, ain't no job getting 100% of me. I don't care who you are. Like, you pay me enough, you can get this 20% and you can be okay.
Okay, let's talk about that a little bit, because I think that we're in a different environment than we were like even 3 years ago, 5 years ago. COVID has changed things. Number one, because we have work from home. So now people can see a little bit of your life. They hear your kids, they hear your husband, they hear your neighbors mowing their lawn. And so you're literally bringing them inside your home. Then you have social media where people share way too much about themselves online. You can find out anything. I mean, people feel very open on social media. And then you have our culture where we're always debating some type of social issue. And during, you know, the pandemic, it was race, it's sex, it's, you know, gender. There's always some social issue to be debated. And so, you know, Emanuel said that he brings 30% of himself, or I'm sorry, 20% of himself to work. And you know, Yadira and Roberta, how do you feel about that? How much of yourself do you bring to work? And can you even compartmentalize like that?
I think I agree with you. Like, the pandemic has changed, like working from home has changed a lot. I think I bring more of myself to work and to my job than I did before. I think, well, two things happen. I think one, my career spans about what, 20 years. And I think over the last 5 to 7 years, I've come more into my own personally. Meaning like I have my own style and I come in more into my like opinions and thoughts about things. So I'm just naturally going to be that regardless of what environment I'm in. But it really, for my career, I will say that in the last, I would say 5 to 7 years, I bring more of myself, and I made decisions to intentionally be more of myself. For example, I wear my hair big and curly. I have a tattoo, a big, huge tattoo. And
a whole
sleeve. And before I did that, make the decision to do it, it did cross my mind, well, how will I be perceived in a work environment? But I literally spent like this much time on it, because it's like, by that point where I was in my career, I'm like, I've built enough credibility from my work history, from my experience. If what's going to knock me off of like getting accepted, you know, offered a job or being accepted at a current job is this, then I don't want it. And I felt like I was at a point in my career where I could make that decision, and I had choices to do that. As far as like what I actually bring to work now, it's interesting because, yeah, I find myself being more casual, just in like the language and the words and the things that I say and the phrasing that I say. It's more casual and laid back and probably more me than it was before when I was in an office every day. Because it's a lot harder to do the code switching when I'm in my own natural environment.
That's a good point. That's a good point. And I think, honestly, for me, when I am in front of I just feel less authentic. it's a facade that you got to keep up. And sometimes I don't feel like it. I don't feel like it. I don't feel like having a facade. I don't feel like hiding to who I am. To me, it's harder. And when you have a family, you have kids, that creeps over into work. And so it's harder to try to pretend like I don't have kids. In fact, I'm going to do that. I'm not going to pretend I don't have kids or a husband or a life or like not working, and like to have my personal life. And for me, I feel like it makes our team more interesting. Some people I don't want to know about. To be honest, I don't. I'm not interested. But there are, some people I want to know a little bit more about. And so I do set up boundaries for myself. Like I don't follow my team on social media. I don't follow, I don't follow you unless you quit or I quit. Somebody has to quit in order for me to follow you on social media, because I just want some separation. And except LinkedIn is the only one where I'll follow people because it's a professional. But Yadira, what do you think? Because, I know you have I'm
a little different here. And I think that early on in my career, I was forced to reckon that being a Black Hispanic woman. And I realized that I felt more comfortable in urban and Hispanic settings, both because they understood my personal and my professional. And I didn't have to choose, and I didn't have to build these walls around it. So therefore, after my first agency experience, I decided, you know what, I don't ever want to work again in just general market agencies or do that work. When I have much more fun and I can be more of my natural self in a Hispanic or urban setting. So my career, I have designed it that way. Motherhood then came in, and I said, then I definitely want to live on my terms now that I have children. And that has created a different story for me. So I would say I bring more of myself, like 80-90% of myself to my experiences, especially after being a mother. Because when I became a mother, I decided to leave and take a hiatus to be with my son. When I had the other children, and when I was moving down to Florida, across state lines, I decided I'm only going to take a job that allows for flexibility for me to be the mother I want to be. And I think that those things, because I have decided to live on my terms, have forced me to be authentically me wherever I have gone after that, because it's been on the table from the very beginning, from the negotiation table. So when the agencies and clients that I choose to have now are getting the fullness of me. You know what you're getting, and we're doing this on terms that I am happy to participate, and I'm happy to bring all these pieces of me and to educate about all the pieces of me.
Mm-hmm. So Emanuel, how do you determine which 20% they get, and how do you compartmentalize that on a daily basis?
Honestly, I didn't initially think about work that way. Like I was a type of and for people listening, like we went to graduate school for like mass communication and like strategic thinking. So we were like strategists by trade. And like the indoctrination that came with that was just like, this is who you are. Like, this is how you see the world. Like, strategy is, you get in with whatever. It was just like, it was pretty much like you had to put your whole self in that role. And I kind of did that. Like I did it at every agency where I worked, whether it was like general market, a multicultural, large agency, small regional shop. And when my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2011, and I was literally like trying to get a business up off the ground, flying home every month to take care of her, sending her money every month, making sure she goes to her chemo appointments at Duke, I knew I was the type of person like your typical man who's just like, I'm just gonna bear this weight. You know what I'm saying? Like I got to hold it all together. And like right before she passed away, like I broke. And my mom transitioning just like cleaned the slate for me. And I remember going into work, like, just like not afraid of anything. Like all of the threats that come along, not being a team player and trying to navigate the passive aggressive mess, I'm saying, from like working in a majority white space. Like I didn't give 2 cents about any of that. And I realized that the whole time I was bringing like 100% of myself to this agency, the minute I disengaged, they were ready to throw 100% of me out the door. You know what I'm saying? Then on top of that, like I'm giving them 100% of me. And, you know, you work in advertising. I feel like it's like this in other agencies too, or other companies too, whatever. You know, they had this multiplier. So like they basically like multiply your rate by like 2 or 3, and then that's what they charge a client. So even if you bring in 100% of yourself, somebody's making 200% off of your 100%. So you're not even like getting that. So like, why does it like, it don't make sense for you to be like, I'm gonna give it 110%. You lucky I'm gonna give you 10. So like for me, it was like life just sort of like unfolded in a way that like really forced me to determine where I wanted to put my energy, and it was not at work. Like, I tested, you know, we strategists, we test stuff. And for like a good 5 months, I just dialed everything back like 50%, and nobody said a word. And I remember going into my boss's office and I was like, I'm bored. Like, these brands are boring. These people are ugly. I don't like working here. Like, and he was like, everybody loves you. The clients love you. And I was like, I don't even use 100% of my brain. I use like 20%. And you know what he said?
That's enough.
Yeah, basically, he was like, I know. And I was like, what? Like,
he's like, welcome to the secret.
Right. I'm like, is that how the rest of the world just operates?
Yeah.
But
I think to me is that when the rest of the world, okay, I have this running joke here in this family. You know what the most frustrating thing is when you're gifted? Is dealing with ungifted people. Okay. So it's like if you're gifted and you're like, oh, I'm only going to bring 40% and everybody else is playing with 20% and they think that's their best, then you're just cruising and bored.
It actually makes you, when you bring 100% to work and you work with people who don't, it just makes your job more frustrating. Like you spend your day being frustrated because XYZ didn't do this and this person didn't do that. And, you know, so yeah, I mean, what I've learned is do the thing that pays me. Do the thing, concentrate on the thing that pays me, which means, I mean, hopefully nobody in my work is listening to this, but what am I going to prioritize? The things that impact my bonus. Okay, great.
There's a distinction here because I think we're talking about bringing our full selves in terms of identity versus exerting the effort that you do at work. I think there is a difference there.
They're related.
There's a difference. It's a difference.
They cousins, man. They cousins. They're related. All
no, I mean, let's talk about like language and code switching. Like that's kind of, you know, that's not related.
All right, let's go there. Let me define what Harvard Business Review calls code switching, because I know we want to go there. Harvard Business Review says code switching is adjusting one's style of speech, appearance, behavior, and expression in ways that will optimize the comfort of others in exchange for fair treatment, quality service, and employment opportunities. That's code switching. So the question that I have about code switching is, I mean, I have a lot of questions about it, but the first one is distinguishing code switching from professionalism. Can you do that? Like, what is the difference in your mind between code switching and being professionalism? We know, and I'll say this as a preference, we know that code switching is rooted in racism, right? It's basically a term that was given because Black people could not be themselves. They had to change the pitch of their voice. They had to, you know, wear, you know, tight pants to work. I don't know, stuff, you know, change their mannerisms, take the accent out of their voices in order to make people, you know, wear their hair in a perm. If even if they didn't want to, couldn't wear their hair out, you know, in a way that grew out of their head. So we know it's rooted there, but how do you separate, you know, code switching from professionalism? I always find that kind of, you know, difficult to do. Who wants to jump into the fray? I think
Roberta has a great answer for this, Roberta.
Well, okay, yeah. So 2 things. So one, I think being professional is meeting whoever you're communicating with and on a level that they understand, that it's a dialogue. So whatever that means, you know, to some people, like in some situations, if it's too, you know, If it's a group of Black folks in a conference room, I'm going to relate to them however I feel I want to relate to or can relate to them. I'm going to relate to other people and talk about whatever to relate to them. So
is that code switching or being professional?
I think that's more, well, first, I think it's a spectrum. And I think that's more on the lines of being professional. It's just being mindful and relating to other people in a business setting to communicate, so you make sure you're understanding where you're coming from. I've experienced code switching and I've observed code switching in not even like work environments. So like, for example, like my partner, he code switches and he code switches with me. Like, so I hear him sometimes on the phone with his family who they're Southern, they're from South Carolina. And so when he's on the phone with some of his family, I can tell because he talks with a little bit more of a Southern accent. He uses words and like phrases and like certain slang that he doesn't use with me. And so I called him on it. I was like, well, why you do that? And so he acknowledged that he does it. But it's more of like, well, if I use certain words or phrases, if I have certain conversations with them that I have with you, they're going to think I'm bougie, or they're going to think I'm this or that. And I'm just like, well, wait a minute, what do you think of, like, so it's
Roberta, you
it's
bougie.
not like
you bougie, first of all.
Roberta's bougie light. She's not bougie.
She is.
She's approachable bougie.
I mean,
I like it, Roberta.
Roberta, we've known you for 20 years. It's okay.
Look, this is what you're gonna get regardless. Like, it's just, this is it. And anyway, so I think that code switching is exactly what the part you said about the definition. It's done to make whoever you're talking with, whoever you're communicating with, more comfortable. And the onus, the hit comes from you, from a personal space. Now, I think what should be explored is like why you feel the need to accommodate these other people more than yourself.
There you go.
But that is what I think is like the nut that needs to be cracked.
I feel like,
but I mean,
go ahead, Yadira, go.
I have a lot of repertoire because of the two languages, and I code switch in both languages. And one of the things that gives me pause, specifically when I think about Spanish and who I speak my most relaxed Spanish with, it's like my love language. So it is not about making other people feel comfortable, but it's sharing my love with those folks. Because that's when I say I speak Spanish, English, and Dominican. Because the way Dominicans speak our Spanish, we're like, it's like you're at that comfort level. So I have that. Now, the way I speak my English, same thing. The way I speak my English at work versus how I speak my English to my husband, very different repertoire of what I use. And I do make the distinction of professionalism is just speaking in the standard English or Spanish form. I've been asked both in interviews. Like, do you know how to speak professional Spanish? Yes, I do. And I know the difference.
Really?
Yes. So we have, just like we have here, African-American vernacular English, we have the same thing. And then it varies per country. If I am speaking to a Mexican, they don't understand some of my regionalisms. So I have to adjust that too. And again, not thinking about their comfort level. I just want them to understand what I'm saying and not have a miscommunication, say a word that is a bad word for them, but for me, it's just an average word, So
yeah, that's interesting. I guess I come to code switching from like a different perspective. One, being a Southerner, because everybody in the South has a Southern accent. So it's not until you go above the Mason-Dixie line where people are just like, you don't speak professionally because you talk Southern. Well, in the South is how we talk, you know what I'm saying? And like the South is full of like lawyers and engineers and doctors, you know what I'm saying? So like it's not a barrier to professionalism like it is like, up north or Midwest or whatever. But then also being a like 6'1", dark-skinned Black man, like from an early age, I was groomed is too strong of a word, but I was very aware of what it meant to like carry yourself in a certain way in the presence of white people.
Yes.
Like, and especially being in the South and having and not all of these white people like expecting me to change and contort myself, but I was like very aware of like what it meant to like speak like a little more assertively, to like stand in your authority, to not completely cower, you know what I'm saying, just to be confident in yourself, because in the South there's a history of like Black people being subservient. So, and like, I even hate saying that, but it's the truth. So by the time I entered like the workforce, like, you know, being slung to New York City, it was a complete culture shock, because that was one of the first times where I had to like really sit down and be like, am I going to have to change the way I talk to everybody? Because people literally hear the Southern accent and they just like, get this goofball out of here. You know what I'm saying? We don't sell turnips off turnip trucks up here in New York City. And that was like hard, you know what I'm saying? Then I got this whole thing of like, well, let me act professional enough so these white people can tell the difference between me and like the dude at the front desk. You know what I'm saying? And like, and that's an ugly truth. And I feel like everyone at some degree has to walk that tightrope. But like me, by the time I got to my last agency, which I like to call the Police Academy of Advertising, because I was just like, I ain't code switching nothing. Like, you gonna like this, how you gonna get it? Like, you gonna get it all. And guess what? No, none of my clients were just like, get this guy off my brand. Nobody was like, get this guy out of these focus groups. Everybody wanted me on the pitch. Clients loved me to death. And that's when I just realized, like, I feel like there's definitely a luxury of getting to a point where you could be like, am I gonna be me, or am I gonna like, you know, be safe?
So
But
wait,
like,
before that,
yeah.
and I have a question about that and a point about that. So when people, and I've had that happen too, where they seem to welcome it, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, is it just you're accepting, or is it like I'm a novelty? Am I entertainment to you? Like
That's
when I, you know
that's
what I
their
mean?
issue, not mine. Like that's how I reconciled it. Like, because my whole thing is like, what I'm not going to do, I'm not going to center your whiteness and your definition of how somebody should act to make you comfortable. I'm not doing that. And I didn't care what the fallout was, but I, you know, again, this is like post my mom's death, like super fearless, not like caring what anybody thought. And I still live, you know, that way to this day. So no
Yeah, and I
regret.
think we have to separate professionalism from whiteness, because whiteness doesn't necessarily mean
Right.
perfection.
And you really
Right.
But that's
it
what,
doesn't.
but
It
that's what we've
doesn't.
been
But
drilled.
that's
That's what
what
we've been conditioned.
that's
Right.
what people have been
Our
taught
conditioning
to,
has been
conditioned to make you think, but it's really not. And so do you guys think that code switching is a negative thing? Is it a tool that you use? I haven't.
It's a coping mechanism.
It's a passport. It's a passport. Basically. Like, you know what I'm saying?
I would say it's
Like,
a cultural tool that we get.
yeah.
Again, when I think about it as a repertoire, I think it adds to my tool set. It doesn't just, you know, take anything away from. As a matter of fact, I feel like I'm more gifted because I got more access.
Yeah, and I think the way I think about code switching is ultimately, how does switching make you feel? Like, do you feel like a phony because you gotta take your voice up 2 octaves to talk to Todd down the hall?
As a man,
like
I did. I ain't gonna lie. Like, I remember dating this guy. It was like a while ago, and we were at some panel discussion, whatever. And it was like all of these black guys on the stage, and all of them had this really high pitch, like super,
like
You
Kanye.
know, voices.
Kanye switched his voice
yes,
up.
absolutely. And I remember going like, why do all these black men talk this way? And he turned to me and he said, the higher you go up the corporate ladder, the more you have to like alter yourself to like make like, you know, leadership and people comfortable. And that just completely disgusted me. Like,
If you Roberta, if you watch Kanye's 3-part documentary, you can see the difference between how he speaks in part 1 and 2 and how he speaks in 3. His voice is
I have to go back and look at it because I watched it, but I didn't even catch that when I watched it the first time.
No, his voice is definitely different. But I feel like code switching, it is, if it feels harmful to you, then it's a negative. If you feel like it can float and get you into different rooms and you don't feel like you're giving up a part of yourself in order to be successful, then, you know, I think it's fine. I mean, some people might say I code switch on this podcast. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I'm just trying to enunciate.
You know, you sound great.
About 70% of the brown Hamlin I know.
Yes.
And I think one thing that we have mentioned, I know we've talked about in the past, is if you don't feel comfortable in how you're bringing yourself to the table, the table becomes not attractive. Who wants to be at that table?
Right.
You know,
sure.
and it's especially when you get to talking about growing, when you get to a certain age, I'm not trying to play and jump these hoops to be at your table. Oh no, if you're not going to take what I'm bringing, what I want to bring comfortably, then we have no business trying to do business together.
So
I think there's a shift.
Oh, go ahead, Roberta.
Oh, no, well, I was just gonna say, like, I think there's a shift coming. I think that we've starting to see it with like Gen Z and their boundaries, and like they are all about bringing their whole selves to every situation, for better or for worse. Sometimes I don't like it. Sometimes I don't like it, but I have to applaud their like bravado of like their boundaries.
They do,
because I didn't have it at that time of my career. I did not have it.
Same. The reason, so I work in healthcare, obviously, and I work in a hospital. And so they don't, they work from home wasn't a thing. It was not a thing at all. They didn't even want us to give us the VPN when COVID first started. I'm like, how are we gonna work from home if you don't give us a VPN? We got all this patient data, like what? And so it was very foreign, and a lot of older. And so now that we're quote unquote coming out of COVID, even though we're in a surge right now, the executives were determining like if we want to suspend work from home, and the young people was like, no, if you tell me to come back to work, I'm quitting. And the way the job market is set up right now, I believe them. Okay, right. They can quit and leave anytime. And I do admire that they already have these boundaries. Now, where they get it from being spoiled, I don't know, but it has changed the organization, I think, for the better. So I think there's something that people our age, Gen Z, late millennials or old millennials, can learn from them.
I agree.
A little bit. So I want to talk about something that has come out of, that's connected to this, that's come out of the racial uprising in 2020, how saying Black Lives Matter became cool, and that whole thing. And one of the things that companies did, besides change their LinkedIn to Black and their social medias to Black, is that they installed these executives over diversity, equity, and inclusion. Or did I say that right? Yeah, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so a lot of the times, at least the people I see on my LinkedIn, because there's a lot of DEI experts on my LinkedIn, a lot of them are people of color, both men and women. I see them equally, but they're always people of color. And so I feel two ways about this. There's always a yin and a yang about how I feel about diversity and inclusion. But I'm gonna let y'all. What has been your experience with diversity and inclusion initiatives at your workplace, if you've seen them, and how have they been rolled out? Roberta.
I'm gonna just say one word, which is performative. Like they've gone down this route, this path of assigning a spokesperson, if you will, to figure it out, B, to say that they've done something, they're working on it, they're making changes. And when they put these people in positions, they have no idea what they're looking for, what they want to achieve. And in some part, they're hoping that person will figure that part out too. And because of that, these people don't have qualifications. Like, what are if you don't have a goal or something in mind, like, what are you there to solve specifically? Other than, you can have your own personal feelings about it. I'm not a fan.
Yadira?
So I have mixed feelings about this one too. I am one of those people helping agencies in their diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. And as such, I agree with Roberta that many of the efforts are performative. Now, when it comes to my involvement, that's what I'm not going to do. So if I'm involved, I'm going to make sure that it's benefiting. My motivation, first and foremost, is Black and Brown communities. So as long as the work that I'm doing is benefiting, one of the examples is a mentorship program that I developed from an HBCU. I know that those students are getting value from what we're doing. Now, I also feel like when you say a lot of the DEI people are people of color, Black people, brown people, some people don't want to do it. And some people are tired and worn out and be like, bro, go Google or go, I've taught you this 1,000 times and you still over here trying to learn. So I understand that, but there are some of us, especially to me, like as a strategist, that we've worked with popular culture and audiences and changing people's mindsets and influencing with messaging, that this is also natural work for what we've been talking about. That I've been talking about diversity for 20 years and haven't been involved in all the ranges of the conversation. So to me, it flows natural to the work that I do. And if I've always been a bridge builder, then I'm sure enough going to do it in a way that is impacting our communities in a positive way. But I do see that most of us is performative. And when we are placed in those instances, it's not just giving you the title, but are they giving you the funds and access to the human power that you need to bring about these changes? Going back to change management. Are you serious about change management, or are you just, trying to check off some boxes?
Mm-hmm. How much time I got?
Oh Lord!
You might have this. This might have to be. This might have to be a part 1, part 2 episode. So just letting the viewers know right quick. I feel like us as a country, we are not honest when we talk about subjects like this, because racism is a tree that bears many branches and fruit, and one of those branches is DEI. The only reason we have DEI as a topic of discussion is because of racism. And it's because white people feel comfortable with other white people in positions of power, period. And even when you bring in more people of color, intersectional people to lead these DEI charges, the leadership and the decision makers are still intact, and they tend to be more homogenous. So you can have a very diversified workforce, but Billy Bob and Bobby Billy and Chuck and Brad and Gary and them are still holding all these executive positions. They're also on they have majority of stock. They're like majority stakeholders. And ultimately, to like Yadira's point, they decide where the money goes. They decide like who gets what. And like, to me, I just feel like DEI is a waste. 2 words: Juneteenth ice cream.
Walmart, bring that up.
On Fortune 5, Walmart is Fortune 500's like #1 richest companies in the United States. And you mean to tell me that they would rather spend millions of dollars concepting ice cream, designing this label, coming up with a name, doing research to determine which flavor it's going to be? Is it going to be crab legs? Is it going to be Hennessy? Or is it going to taste like red velvet cake? Okay, we did focus groups. They like red velvet. Then you made it. Then you distributed it into all these stores. And then you had the nerve to be like, here y'all go, happy Juneteenth. Now, who's that?
It's the freedom person? For me.
Exactly.
Right.
It tastes like freedom. Like, it's like, what? So go into DEI, you know what I'm saying, by now. Where's the DEI at Walmart? Where's the D?
Yeah.
Where the I?
Where's the E?
Yeah, exactly.
And a lot of these times, like in the quick response is, well, where was the Black people? There clearly was no Black people in the room.
Sometimes Black people be signing off on that stuff.
Listen, let's talk about it, because people really don't know.
And sometimes they're outnumbered. Again,
yes,
the table. Who's at the table?
But they're also very comfortable being in that position too. Like, I feel like from a marketing standpoint, a lot of people don't understand, like, things just don't happen to like appear before the public. It goes through so many people and so many checkpoints and channels before someone allocates money from the budget to like get things made. And there are a lot of Black people in these boardrooms. I'm pretty sure some Black people at Walmart was just like, let me see, should we make this Juneteenth ice cream, or should we make this KKK Crunch Bar? Oh, let's make this Juneteenth ice cream.
I guarantee you they
started it last year.
Yeah.
I have a question, because there are other Juneteenth products at Walmart, for celebration plates, banners, whatever. And I also know that Walmart is trying to compete against Amazon and being a distributor. So there's a lot of people that take their entrepreneurship ventures, and Walmart is just another distributor. To me, my question is, do people even know if a Black person put a banner on there and they're trying to make money through Walmart?
It's the same.
Because it's disconnected. Right.
It's the same with the t-shirts.
Yeah,
I found
like
that
you want to have the options to be inclusive. Or let's say some people do have special Juneteenth celebrations. Where do they go to find their supplies? And now we're like, oh, here we go. You can find some supplies here. But at the same time, it's like, bro,
Are you defending this? I thought it was
No,
a joke when I saw it.
Listen, all I'm gonna say is
that's why I have a question mark, because to me is.
So I got your answer.
Okay. Go ahead,
Yeah.
answer.
All right. So we all strategists, right? Like we used to remember, we did focus groups. We wrote the discussion guides. We know how to interview people and all of this stuff, distill the information, and make sure it gets parlayed into communication, whatever. Black people been celebrating Juneteenth for a long time in this country, and ain't nobody asked for no damn t-shirt and no ice cream and no slippers and no hats and no confetti
And no underwear.
and no underwear.
There was
You know what I'm
underwear.
saying? So for a lot of and I get it, people trying to get into their bag, you know what I'm saying, sell whatever, la-di-da-di-da. But I'm pretty sure if someone would have been honest and conducted this consumer research, you would have been able to glean the fact that Black people do not want this commemorative day to be commercialized. One, because it's offensive. Two, we don't own a lot of the manufacturers and the companies who make this stuff. So like if we did go out and spend a whole bunch of money on Juneteenth paraphernalia, 100% of that money wouldn't go back to our communities. And we don't want people making money off of what this means to us. So stop with the ice cream. Stop with like the party hats. Stop with all this Juneteenth.
It was too soon. It just became they trying to make it Memorial Day.
But I think that's key. To me, people complain when they don't see a connection to the benefit to the community. Like that's why Bath and Body works with Black History Month. Like, why couldn't you just elevate?
Yeah, if a Black company had done something Juneteenth, first of all, it wouldn't have looked like that.
Absolutely,
that was terrible. I was like, who was the designer on this? But I feel like it comes from a more authentic place, and I think it would be more accepting. Walmart is not where you go for cultural, like it's where you go when you want rollback.
I'm sorry.
prices.
One more thing.
Go ahead.
Black people spend more money, and Black people make more trips to Walmart than other segment groups. So Walmart does not need another $4 for Black people. You know what I'm saying, for Juneteenth. If that's the case, why don't you just give your retail space to Black ice cream producers, and you let them determine what they want to offer, like to this customer segment during this time. But Walmart don't need another dime for Black people. You can tell
that's the Target strategy.
Absolutely,
Target has done a better job. Yes.
Yeah, they definitely have. That's a great example. Target has done a great job incorporating diversity into their not only their offerings, but bringing Black creators and into the space to do it. They didn't say, okay, great, we Tabitha, you stay over there messing a bottle, we gonna take your idea, it's gonna be messing a jug and we're gonna adapt it. They did bring people into the space and provide people with the access in order to scale up, in order to provide the products that they do. So I had Juneteenth on my list to talk about, but I see that it was going to come up. I think, taking it back to DEI people, I do think, it's performative for the most part, because most of the time these people come in into an organization, they don't give them a team, they don't give them any budget, they don't give them any power to make decisions. And so they just kind of stay in the background and send out monthly emails about Gay Pride, Black History Month. Oh, guys, it is AAIP, or what is it? Asian Pacific.
API.
Don't forget
API,
Hispanic Heritage Month in October.
Hispanic Heritage Month. That's all they do is send out the emails, but they don't have any real power. They don't make any real change that changes the environment that people are in. And so it's a tough job for them. It's not a job that I would
whose
take,
idea
was
it?
Tough. They're getting paid.
Well,
that's true,
right? But whose idea was it?
They bring in 20% of themselves to work. What did you say, Roberta? I'm sorry.
Like, whose idea was it to make it one person? Like, if you really about like any initiative, whether it's diversity or anything, like you have to, and we all know corporate enough to know how everything's structured. You need decision makers across the board. You need decision makers in HR and product development, in like every single piece of the organization. Like, one person cannot make enough decisions. They have no authority to do anything, to make any real change across an organization.
just to that, I personally feel like a lot of these companies leaving the basically the role of diversifying the workforce to like people of color. I feel like that's racist, because you're basically asking like Black and brown people to come in and fix a problem that white people created. And instead of like putting the money into like educating your leadership and having them understand like the benefits of making sure their workforce and seeing leadership like reflects like, you know, what America looks like now and will look like, you just gonna have this Black woman come in and she's gonna stay for 2 years and then she gonna bounce, but like you still gonna have the same like issues. So I just kind of feel like it's incredibly racist and offensive to be like, hey, darky, come fix our diversity problems.
Well, they do that. I mean, they do that to women. If you look at when women become CEOs, when women take leadership positions at these big companies, it's usually after somebody came in and made a huge mess, and they want people of color to come in and be the face and clean it up. And we've changed. So that is definitely not anything new. But also that I think people forget that diversity, equity, and inclusion is about more than race. Right. It's about, being, able body. It's about gender. It's about, being, diverse in every sense of the word. And, a lot of companies, first of all, they're not ready for it because their workforce is not ready for it. Right. They don't. I've heard some.
Or they only think about it in a one-sided way, because to Emanuel's point, it is very hard for one person to have expertise on all pieces of diversity, of equity, and of inclusion. So that to me outlines that it needs to be a team effort, and you should have people of different backgrounds, different points of views, different abilities around the same table, developing a corporate culture that fits a lot of what America looks like.
Or you could just have well-rounded people run these companies. You know what I'm saying? Like to me, it's just like that should be a part of vetting leadership. It's just like, what is your background and how exposed are you to like other facets of life in America? Because like, let's be honest, like we went to school with some people, we worked with some people, and we knew we was their first Black person they ever met. You know what I'm saying? Or like, first gay person, or I guess like masculine presenting gay person in my case. So it's like these people, they go through life and get these positions and they don't have to change and alter a thing. You know what I'm saying? Right. And then on top of that, you got somebody who comes in and solves your diversity problems, but like their views and perspectives on the world don't change whatsoever.
One of the things that I do want to see working in the space is this. I want to see become a reality when their compensation is tied to the diversity, equity, and inclusion goals.
Yeah, that's when it's real. Yeah, that's when because if it ain't, if one thing you know about America, they only take capitalism seriously. That's the only thing.
Right.
Over all things, it is about money. So, okay, so I'm going to switch gears. We're going to talk about this really quick. Another thing that was in the news in the past couple of weeks, and it's just your quick take on poor HoneyPot. So if you don't know, HoneyPot is a feminine hygiene product company owned and started by a Black woman who partnered with Target to distribute her products throughout the United States. She changed the formula to some of her products because in order to scale, you have to change your products so that they last longer on the shelves and therefore are safer for people. And so she changed her product, apparently didn't communicate it, and she caught hell on the internet for a few days. How do y'all feel about HoneyPot? As marketing and communication experts, how do y'all feel about HoneyPot and what was done and what she could have done better?
Y'all women. I'm gonna let y'all go. I'm gonna
say the days of where you think you can do something and your consumer is not gonna find out about it, those are over. You cannot have somebody sit on your board and say something off the cuff and think that's not going to be related to your company. You cannot change your product formulation and think your consumer is not going to find out. So to me you better believe that all the information is out there and the consumer is very savvy. Okay, all gonna be cool. The consumer is not a moron. She's your wife. We still, I mean, What do we think? It's us. We're the consumers. You know.
So what should she have done?
She should have done PR. She should have communicated so that she can have a loyal base that is now sharing, evangelizing, and sharing that message, instead of finding out and the same people that love you are now spreading all this kind of stuff about you and your brand.
Yeah.
Roberta.
Any major change, any to your product, to who you're working with, to your supply, like all of that, again, as Yadira said, it's readily known. Like, and if it's smart, it's going to be a talking point. If she was really true, and we're going to go on the assumption of what she said, you know, her statements after the fact, that she did it to make a better product, to make it scalable, to make it whatever, use that as an opportunity. Like, why would you, I don't think she necessarily hid it, but why would you not even just as an opportunity, a communications opportunity?
Yeah.
So like this HoneyPot fiasco, just like Insecure is like a sweet spot in my life, because like I have a skincare brand. I'm an entrepreneur, and I have a mass communication background. So like when it happened, I was just like, oh my God, this is like, I feel so bad for her, but it's kind of fascinating. So I can't like turn away. So like, it's a conflation of just like drop balls, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I don't necessarily hold the CEO accountable, because she's the CEO. She got to make sure everything's working. But that CMO, I'm side eyeing. You know what I'm saying?
If she has one.
No, she has one, because I'm nosy. I found her on LinkedIn. So, you know, she does.
She still have a job?
Yeah, I don't know. But majority of her background is like copywriting and not necessarily like marketing and leadership. So I'm like, red flag. But like, as a CMO, you know what I'm saying? Basically, your whole job is to make sure that the infrastructure of marketing and communication supports the business. And ain't no way in the world a seasoned CMO would sit back and let beloved products, get totally reformulated, or let's just say new and improved, because like for the most part, all she did was make sure that so certain preservatives and things were included, so her product can have longer shelf life and get sent to more people, you know, so they can like have a greater stand a greater chance of using it. But you mean to me like the recipe for your product changed, and nobody in marketing and communication said we should probably get ahead of this? Like, I'm pretty sure they did research in the lab, you know what I'm saying, to test which preservatives had this effect, Then on top of that, the stuff had to be tested to see if it worked. Then on top of that, like they had to get packaging printed, because you know they got different labels and stuff. Then you had to distribute it. So there was like a long amount of time for somebody from that communication team to be like, let's put a content video out. Let's do a series where so-and-so can explain to people why HoneyPot needed to make the changes, like, you know, that they did. But that just didn't happen. And it was like so unfortunate. And like, I just kind of feel like the CMO, I ain't gonna say nobody should get trouble.
CMO is Chief Marketing Officer.
Sorry, Chief Marketing Officer. She deserved a whipping or something, because that was just like
if she's a copywriter, if that's her background, the design, like the literal copy changed on the box. Like, at the very
she's been in the CMO position for like 7 years. You know what I'm saying? At the HoneyPot. So that's why I'm like, I don't know. Sis.
I mean, if you
this reminds me of something else. People get promoted because they do their job well, not because they fit the ascension that they get promoted to. So if this person was doing creative work and copywriting work, and she's excellent, but she keeps on getting promoted to CMO, but she has no real CMO experience or preparation for that level of work and manage a brand, then that's on somebody else, not really her.
Because people see it as selling a product and not necessarily managing the brand, managing crisis. It's all of that.
Point number two, and I say this all the time. People who don't work in communications or don't work in marketing and advertising, they think it is very easy. They feel like you just slap a logo together. They feel like you make an Instagram page and you sell some product, and it's just like, oh, I'm a brand strategist. But it's like, and you know, I've said this in our group chats before, like there's a difference between like communicating like something on a lower level and designing communications to speak to millions of people at a time. Like that is the mass part. That is a skill. If you have not worked in that capacity, you don't have it. And that was a huge gap in terms of like where the HoneyPot fumbled, because they have an audience that is like vast and like, and not just vast, but like invested in this category and
Right.
invested in this product for like numerous reasons. Because we all know, y'all know, but y'all can have a different podcast talk about Black women and reproductive health issues, all the stuff. But like there's like passion like behind this product. She talking about her ancestors gave her the recipe and all this stuff. Like, girl, I don't even have a vagina. You had me invested in this brand. You know what I'm saying? I'm supporting you too. So you got that, you know what I'm saying? Like they dropped the ball on that because like communication is not easy. But then you also have like the consumer aspect of it. And we all know this. If you don't know your consumer, if you don't know who is buying your stuff, or at least getting other people to buy it, you have failed. I don't care how good your logo looks. I don't care like who you got to see more position. Like that's an L. And if anything, she should have known that was not the consumer group to play with. You know what I'm saying? Like, look, because she saw how much they like they galvanized her and supported her. It's like, girl, they equally capable of doing the opposite.
Right. And that's the thing. That's what I want to say, because I do think that she made a huge mistake, right? She made a huge mistake, but they took, I mean, the viciousness at which they attacked. I was like, oh my God, like she made a mistake. And then it's so hard to dial that back. And I wish we weren't. So I'm now granted, it is your lady parts.
It's a personal product.
That's a very
perfect storm of
you cannot be playing around with that. But
right.
you know, I there was rumors that it was sold. It's hard to get those horses back in the barn once they out, because people want to believe the lie. They readily believe the lie, and they're gonna keep believing the lie no matter how much you put the truth out there. They just gonna keep believing it. And so it's hard to do. So
she got to hit the host role. She got to be in these communities, on the ground, every event. Like that's what she has to do. But it would take a seasoned marketing like communication expert.
Yeah, she put out a video too, a long video that kind of rambled on. She was sitting on the floor somewhere. It was just not. I was like, girl, this is not helping.
There's a special PR for that crisis management. That's what they need right now.
Yes.
It ain't just
Somebody need to call the real Olivia Pope. So thank you guys for joining me. So the last question I'm going to ask is, obviously the podcast is called Grown and Growing. And I know each of you are growing in your own separate ways, doing your own things, but I want to give you the floor to talk about something that you are invested in growing in your life right now. So we're going to start with Roberta.
Like this concludes ventures.
Yes, it does. Anything. You're growing right now.
I'm growing in many different ways. Well, the most recent area of growth, I've decided to take my love of wine and my love of the culture and start a wine shop, not just a wine shop, but a education piece to bring to light all of the producers of color, women producers of wine, and bring those out so people can enjoy them, because they're not going to find them, unfortunately, in the big box and the big brand stores. So I'm working with a close friend of mine who is a certified sommelier. We started a brand called Vin Bohem, and it's going to be featuring a lot of natural wines, wines produced by people of color. We're going to be doing tastings, classes online, soon to come to the Washington, DC area. And then also we're going to start bringing in producers of color of home goods, of home decor items. So super excited about that. That's my passion of like interior design, of wine. And so figured I've waited long enough. I might as well do stuff that I love. So
excellent. I love it. Drunk styling. I love it.
Yes.
Excellent. I cannot wait. And I was saying the name wrong this whole time. I was saying Vin Bohem, but you said Vin Bohem.
Vin Bohem.
Vin Bohem. All right, Yadira.
Yeah, so I am excited to be growing Inspira Communications. And what I do is I take brands to develop brands and marketing plans of entrepreneurs that are social mission driven to elevate Black and Brown communities. And with that, I also do social mission causes. Like I build aqueducts in the Dominican Republic through Blue Missions. I sit on their board. So for me, at this point in my life, I am using and leveraging my strategic brain to impact positively the lives of Black and Brown people.
Amazing.
You wrote that answer down, didn't you?
Look, she got it. She got it. She not out here playing. What you thought?
I'm serious about this stuff.
All right,
not me, then who?
If not you, then who?
Right.
Emanuel.
Yeah. So
the veteran.
I am a multi-potentialite, so I'm growing in numerous ways and have been over the past 6 years. But my baby is BrandsbyBashight. It's a small batch herbal skincare company that I created just out of a hobby. I blended fragrances myself. I come up with the herbal formulations myself, and I have a portfolio of products. I'm like recommitted to it now because sometimes you get burned out working on your own stuff. So I'm gonna get ready for like the summer launch and super excited to just be mixing oils and mixing fragrances and stuff. I call BrandsbyBashight like skincare meets spirit care because my spirituality is sort of like blossom over the past couple of years too, which also led me to create another venture I call Bless the Roads. And Bless the Roads is my take on creating spiritual goods for Black people. We spend a lot of money in the spiritual marketplace, and the industry is about to hit $242 billion in the next couple of years. And I kind of feel like it's time for a Black company, the Black manufacturer, to exist in this space, but also to create products that centers like the Black experience from a spiritual perspective. So there you go.
Oh, I'm smiling from ear to ear because I'm just so proud of us. I remember when we met 20 years ago, young 20s. Roberta had a whole different life. We all did. We all did. And so I'm so excited for everybody to learn more about your companies, more about your products. I'm proud of us for you guys inspire me to step out on my own to do this podcast. Emanuel, your advice, like you could be talking about that podcast when you're 90. That still plays in my head repeatedly.
I said we can be at her funeral talking about, remember when she wanted to do this podcast? So we are proud of you that you actually
yes, we are.
Salud.
Did it.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining me, and for everybody else, I will see you next time.